GingerGM.
Hello everyone, and welcome to my coverage of a very exciting day of chess. And it's the quarterfinals now of this Champions Chess Tour, the Gold Money leg, and there were some really exciting pairings. Just very quickly we can have a look at who's in the knockout stages. So at the top we have the experienced Aronian versus the young gun Arjun Erigaisi, and this it was a very interesting match. You know, old versus new. We'll see how that goes shortly. Probably the match of the day, Wesley versus Magnus Carlsen. These two have been dominating the Champions Chess Tour over the last year, and they've been scoring points off each other every time. Anything could happen in that match. Liren versus Duda, another very exciting match. These two players play very interesting and similar chess in some way. Both attack a lot. And then Anish Giri versus Vladislav Artemiev. Now, the first legs, they went in the way of Vladislav, and also we're going to just dive, I think, now straight into the games to just have a look, and I'll explain things as we go there. Now, let's start with Anish versus Vladislav. Let's remember these legs were over 2 days, and Vladislav won the first leg, so Anish needed to win this one. But Vladislav, or as you may now know him as, Chuck Norris, the Chuck Norris, is a blooming good chess player, very underrated, and in the first game it did not go Anish's way. Let's just flip the board so we see it from the winner's side. We all like being a winner. And it started off with a Carlsen, and the line that nearly all the top players are playing now, the advanced variation. This is supposed to be the main test of the Carlsen. The Carlsen are very good opening, and maybe actually the best opening to play if you need to win as black. The Sicilian was thought to be the best opening, but after white has been adopting bishop b5 and a lot of variations, it seems that there are a fair few drawing lines. When you play the Carlsen, there's not any obvious drawing lines, and you always get a bit of an imbalance in structure, even in the panoff and every variation. There's no symmetrical pawn structure that white can easily get if he wants to draw. And after e5, bishop f5, the main move, and now h4, which is the Tao's variation, named after Tao. I did a lesson on this on CoChess, and the simple idea is, if black's not paying attention and plays his normal move, e6, which is the normal move because you want to get your bishop out, well, g4, and the bishop is trapped. If it comes in here, f3. If it comes here, h5. This reminds me actually of a very famous, well, I say very famous, but a opening trap made famous by the brilliant Eric Rosen in the London system, and that is after bishop f4, the weird and not very good move, let's be honest, h5. But if white now continues without thinking with e3, most London system players just like going d4, bishop f4, e3. They don't want to think, you know, they're mindless fools. I love the London system. Then Eric Rosen's trap was e5 here, and this is actually, again, when you see patterns in one game, when you get good at chess, you can use them in other systems. And even though this is a totally different opening, the point being, we're going to trap that bishop in the same way with these moves. Bishop takes f6, bishop moves g5, and we trap the bishop. So after this, the main move now is just h5, putting a stop to any funny business with g4. And now c4. And this move was never really one of the most popular choices, but it's the most aggressive. Anish playing as aggressively as he can. The pawn now comes out, and the Carlsen is a very well good positionally founded opening, because black gets this lovely pyramid structure. It's a bit like the London system. He gets this bishop on the other side of that pyramid, and he can just play around the squares, and he gets lots of counter-attacking chances. Knight c3, and now d takes c4. And the idea of this is to get this square for a black piece eventually. Bishop takes c4, knight d7. The other way you can get that square is coming this way. Anish develops the knight. Probably best here because it has chances to come and harass the bishop. And now bishop e7, why not try to win that pawn? This kind of forces g3 if you don't want to lose that pawn. And now black just needs to work out where to put this knight. Knight h6 would be the normal move. But I really like Artemiev's bishop g4. It's a little bit more spicy, as we already have ideas of potentially coming around the angles to that square for a weird maneuver. And even though the computer quite likes white's position here, this seems like a very playable position for black. The knight is coming around also to pressurize that pawn when we take the knight off, for example. And we have a lot of squares for the black pieces. Now, Anish played bishop f4. I'm not sure I'm a great fan of this move. I don't really know what it does. You're blocking in behind your own pawns. It develops a piece, but where? It doesn't do anything. And this is like one of those maybe slightly artificial moves. I know Anish had his birthday, and he also had, I think, the COVID jab, so he might not been on 100%. He didn't seem to be playing his best chess, but this move doesn't seem correct. Maybe just castle seems obvious. And here, something like knight h6, and again, I think this is a way to play, but I think black's absolutely fine here. I'm probably going to take this knight and just try to aim for the square. It's a game of chess. But bishop f4 doesn't seem as useful as castling. Black plays knight h6, and now queen d3 is just a mistake here. I can understand why white's trying to play this because of the f3 plan, but can you see a very good idea here for black? An idea that it comes in a couple of parts, but allows black to get rid of one of the bishops, the light square bishop, which can be a very annoying tacking piece, and start to open up the position. b5, and after the bishop moves, the problem with the queen being here, knight c5, a nice little jump, taking advantage of the pin. The queen has to move, and now we can eliminate that bishop. It's well worth eliminating that bishop because this bishop can be extremely strong in a number of cases, especially on that diagonal. Actually, for example, if we castle h7, is always a square they can aim to checkmate on. And here, Anish really has some problems already. It's a perfect game from Artemiev. He takes with the pawn, not a move he wants to do, but if he takes to the queen, he loses control of d4, and after knight f5, there's simply no good way to defend this pawn. All of white's piece is going to get kicked around. Let's say he tries to defend it. First of all, we nudge this knight away from defense of the other knight. When the knight moves, we take that knight, and knight takes d4 check, winning material. So a takes b3 was played here, and now we nudge that knight away anyway. And the point being, if knight e4 is another good move now. Are you awake? Bishop f3, forking the rook and the knight, which would win material. So bishop takes h6, trying to do something a little bit messy, but now this b pawn just enjoys some fun. Bishop has to take on g7, and now capture here, and white's position is really creaking here. Black's bishop's very strong. Rook b1, gaining a tempo on the bishop, and now a lovely square for the queen, hitting the rook, and this really is a disaster for white. If you castle, there's a number of good moves here, but simply something along the lines of bishop here is pretty stinky, right? Threatening checkmate. You have to play f3, and there's a lot of weaknesses in the position. There's other good moves as well. So rook h2 played, but I'd probably rather resign than play a disgusting move like that. And now black can keep hold of this tremendous pawn. Bishop g5, and it's easy now. Things start to drop off, and the bishops just remain supreme. And with that win, Giri can never really get back. So Vladislav has played some of the best chess so far, and he is, or was, the first person through to the semi-finals. Is he going to play Ding Liren or Duda? Well, let's have a look at a highlight from that match, so we know Vladislav is through. And I would like to just bring up now, and I might just have to change some things here. Bear with me, please, 1 second. Let's see if we can get that up. There we go. And I'm just going to bring up a key position from this match between Ding, Liren and Duda. Both of these guys very good attacking chances. It was a very exciting match. But Ding, when Ding is on fire, oh my word, Ding Dong, Merriolo High, he is a cowboy of death. He can calculate so well. He's so slick with his attacks, and he gets his position as white against Duda. And this was after Duda's just won a game, and this got Ding ahead in the match, which was all important. White's pieces are very nicely placed here, where black has a little bit of a weakness, but after pawn takes c4, white now grabs this opportunity to start an attack. You've got to notice weakened points in your opponent's positions. Also, I think here Duda was just expecting the positional knight takes c4, but oh no. Checkmate ends the game. And also these weaknesses that I mentioned, well, the knight is bad, the bishop is quite passive, the queen is a little bit away, and all these things combined mean that knight takes f7 is just a tremendous way to get to that king. And it was here that Duda suddenly realizes that if he goes king takes f7, can you see the point of white's play? The simple point is we trap that king there with this beautiful move, stopping it retreating. And there's now no decent way to simply stop rook f5 leading to mate. There's nothing. For example, knight c6, rook f5, the king can only move here, queen g6, checkmate. So after knight takes f7, Duda tried queen a6, trying to get this queen back over to defend. But now the rook comes in. Another beautiful move there. If this is taken, there's a number of good options. Simply knight takes would be very good combined with the light squares. The queen comes back, and another powerful move from Ding. Knight takes h6. When you give this guy an initiative, he keeps going. Just the way to play. When you're playing with energy, you've got to keep trying to find ways to break through your opponent's defenses. This has to really be taken. And now rook g6 is the point. What does white do? If he goes to f7, queen f5 again is checkmate. If he goes here, well, he's lined up in the same line as this. This is just going to be disaster, obviously. If he goes to h8, bishop f6 happens. So he has to go bishop to g7. Ding increases the pressure with bishop f6. Rook c7, the only way to defend. And now there are a number of tempting moves, and both players are getting quite short of time here. And Ding, I'll show you what he played first. He played queen takes c4, and he just simply took on g7. And after everything get exchanged, he managed to win the pawn. Let's just go a little bit further on c5. And this pawn is obviously going to drop the black knight. But this position is quite unclear. I mean, black does have the extra piece, and the game went on. You know, Ding Liren won in another 40 moves, but it was an important key win. He kept the pressure up, but this wasn't the clearest way of doing it. Duda got back in the game and nearly held on, which might have even made him qualify. It's positions like this where you can feel there's going to be a big attack, and there's actually two ways to win. Danny King, who was commentating on the Chess24 site, found the first way, and it was the beautiful idea, and this follows a lot of logic. When you're attacking, try to look at finding a win with your most active pieces. So I just highlighted the pieces there which you should be concentrating on. If tactically is a win with those pieces, play it. If not, try to bring in reinforcements. And it seems to me that this rook here in green is the only piece that's not attacking the king. So Danny King, rook to d6, trying to get in a position to swing that over after multiple exchanges on g7 is a brilliant move. The threat, for example, is just to take on g7, and we have rook g6 winning the game. And if black tries queen e4 here, then white can take on g7 with check, force the queens off the board, win a piece back, eventually on b8. Maybe Ding turned this down because of c3, which actually does look quite scary, but white can really just bring the rook around and start doing these pawns. I mean, this is not entirely clear, so this is winning for white, but okay, the game sort of goes on after this move. White's pawns will win the game, but it's not 100%. The computer finds the brilliant win, which none of us commentators found, and it's all about realizing what black's one defensive move is in every variation. And black's one defensive move in every variation is queen e4. This breaks the communication between the pieces, and it's incredibly strong. And even when you're attacking, you have to get in the mind of your opponent. It's not just trying to find ways of bringing your pieces in. And the winning move is just rook g4. And this is getting to the mind of your opponent, thinking what they're going to play, understanding they don't really have many options. And this beautiful move, stopping queen e4, preparing the queen to potentially join in on g6, whilst keeping other ideas open, like a check here, would have won the game. Black is helpless, and this is the smoothest way to win, but a very hard move to find. Now, going to the standings there, Ding did win that game as we discussed, so it's going to be Ding versus Vladislav Artemiev in the semi-finals. I think it's going to be a very close match. I don't really know which way to go there. Ding is incredibly strong, but the way Vladislav is playing, who knows? Now, let's move on to another game. I'll just leave the standings there. Well, we just set up the next game, and we're going to have a look at the other leg now. So, first of all, let's have a look at Erigaisi versus Aronian. And one thing I would like to say about Erigaisi, let's just bear with me where I try to just rearrange this one. Bear with me. Is Arjun has been really impressive. I mean, incredibly impressive throughout the event. Arjun, this young Indian player, has impressed at in every part. And okay, it's very tough playing Aronian, but I don't know how young he is. What's he, 15, 16 years old? He's got a future ahead of him. But one thing that struck me is his very mature playing style. This is Arjun. And we're going to look at one game which ended in a draw here, but I just want to point out some things that really impressed me. Now, Arjun he reminds me a bit of Magnus Carlsen, but you know, he's got lots of tactics as well. Now, it starts off with a Queen's Indian defence. Arjun, this young Indian, the lowest rated player in the field, only 25-60, as you can see, playing much higher rated people. You expect him to lose. Well, here he doesn't get involved with any sharp lines. He just changes the pawn structure to something where the plans become much simpler. He then plays bishop g5. They play some standard moves. Aronian goes for some funky stuff now with g5, but this is risky because the king's a bit dangerous. You weaken some squares, and as the game progresses, well, I just like the simple moves that white plays. He now realizes there's some weakened squares, so he brings his pieces very naturally to those squares. He brings his knights around, he maneuvers them in a very nice way, and like I said, he can also spot tactics extremely well. I mean, here it's probably a little bit better for white because of this nice knight, but nothing serious. And if anything, he goes on to outplay his more experienced player. His pieces, he finds great ways to bring him in the game. And after queen d6, he now spots a tactic which gives him a lovely... Can you spot the tactic that Arjun now plays? Queen takes a7, followed by knight b5, and the knight comes in. He picks up a pawn. And the only mistake I can say he made was in this situation here. He plays the right thing. He goes to undermine on the king side. But after rook b6, he immediately captured on e6 when he should have kept the pressure up against that unit. If he can break down that bishop, Aronian's position would just collapse. He can't hold on to d5. He can't hold on to his position, let's say after exchange like this. And this, I'm sure, would have maybe been a different scenario. Maybe would have given him a way back into the match. Unfortunately, the way things went, he did make one blunder, and this was a blunder. Can you see the move now that he must have missed? Bishop takes d4 from Aronian, and all of a sudden Aronian's back in the game. But to his credit, Arjun went on to draw this game, and it was a very narrow match, but experience got there in the end, and Aronian now is in the semi-final. Who will Aronian play? Wesley So or Magnus Carlsen? Either way, it's going to be a fantastic final, that one. So I'm just going to show you a very key game from that. So again, let me just get that one ready. We'll close you down, please, sir. And we have Now, Magnus Carlsen versus Wesley So, and they were neck to neck. It was an incredibly close match. It went all the way down after 2 days of rapid to the blitz, and it could have gone either way. But Magnus Carlsen he's just so beating So. No, Magnus Carlsen is just really strong. He's one of those guys that can get into the zone. How do people cope with pressure? Some people crumble, some people excel. Magnus excels. And this game was very up and down. But Magnus with the white pieces. He starts with the English opening. You can get my chessable course on this if you're interested, the Iron English. In that, I suggest G3. Now, I used to play knight f3, but I never liked, after G3, the move D5 here, which goes into a reverse Sicilian. Now, one of the points of playing G3, if we compare this to the game, is that if black goes to the same idea, white has another very interesting possibility here by leaving the knight on G1, and a very exciting possibility of putting the knight in front of the king, and then after some standard moves, playing f4. And this has drawn my attention back to the English opening, this one variation which put me off a number of years ago, but it was Richard Palliser who showed me this line, and I thought, yeah, I like this. And some of the points are, you can even start a very nice kingside attack with very aggressive ideas with the pawn on f5. The way Magnus plays it, he can't do the same plan because the knight is already committed here, but we go into another variation. And this is the trendy way now for black to play. It used to be thought that white could capture on e5, which is a standard trick. The point being, if you take, we play d4. Nice position. But it was then found, after some forcing moves here, d4 wins the piece back, but nothing more than that, because black can get his bishop to e5 with equality. So they now play a little bit of maneuvering. Magnus makes an exchange, attacks the queen, moves his knight to put some pressure on e5, and now he's got to get his other bishop out, so he has ideas of bringing it to b2. And now you would have thought bishop b2 would be the way to play, but another thing that always impresses me is how brave and confident Magnus is. The next move I would never play in a million years. Bishop takes c6. But it was a really good move. Why wouldn't I play this move? Because I'm looking at my king, I'm looking at the light squares, and I'm thinking, I want you, bishop. I want you back. I want you back. Is that a song? Probably. It sounds like lyrics to a song. And you give up that bishop, and after this one, yeah, black's pawns are horrible, but your king is a target forever. Really, really dangerous play, but fortune favours the brave. Magnus now aims to exchange some pieces off the board, a good thing when your king's slightly worse and you've got these targets. Wesley plays very well, and he plays the right idea. He's trying to bust through to the king. Now we have a little bit more manoeuvring going on, and this is where Magnus misses his first chance. He plays rook g2, which is overly safe, trying to stop f4. But as we mentioned, exchanges kind of help the side that's getting attacked. And I think bishop c5 here would have been a great move, at least exchanging off some minor pieces in the position, and also stopping another rook coming to f8 in a lot of cases. Okay, but they maneuver on. Wesley keeps going for it on the king side, bringing his pieces around. Magnus at the moment is just waiting for his opportunity, and now he thinks, to hell with it, I'm grabbing that pawn. Why not? Wesley says, okay, I'm going to bust open the position. I'm going to get my bishop in the game. They have some exchanges there, and now f4. Magnus has got to keep the position closed. He clearly can't take here with that queen and bishop flying in there with what must be a winning attack. After f4 is played, e3 anyway, and now the move that Magnus is relying on, knight to e5, hitting the rook. Bishop d2, a counter-attack. There's tactics everywhere. Imagine playing this in a blitz game. I would have no idea. Only players this standard can... They're not defending. Blow for blow. Black attacks the rook. White attacks the rook. Black attacks the queen. Blow for blow. Showing you how important tempo is. Queen c2, rook e6, and now queen f5 was quite risky. Bishop to c5 seems like a safer move, getting that bishop back into the game. The rook comes over to attack the queen. In actual fact, bishop c3 would have been nice now, because you've got to think, always be on guard about your opponent's most active pieces. Clearly that knight is a centerpiece of white's position, therefore just get rid of it. Rook f8 in blitz seems very natural, but after queen takes h5, Magnus has said one, he's got to grab the pawn. Rook takes e5, giving up the exchange is an unfounded move. I understand why black plays this. It looks like his bishops are doing well. He opens up the f-file, but there was no need. If there's a simple way to do something in a position, take the simple option. You don't need to overcomplicate. And rook h6, just putting pressure on the king there is much better. For example, Magnus probably has to get rid of the queens, and after we exchange the queens, that knight is now unstable. When it moves, we can always take this rook, but I even prefer keeping the bishop. Look how bad that rook is. It's going nowhere, and swinging the rook around to a2. And with the bishop pair and with this sort of nasty position, I think Wesley could have easily won this game. Now, the way the game went, it showed great understanding that after many exchanges, and this is a forced variation, it looks like this pawn is going to be very strong, but in actual fact, e6. And there's not much that Wesley can do. This pawn becomes the strong one. Bishop b4, and now a lovely idea. The rook gets behind the opponent's passed pawn. This is what you should do when you're playing against it, and also supporting its own pawn. c5 trying to trap the bishop in, but a4 keeping that pawn. King f8. Rook e5, and the critical moment comes here. I think rook b2, allowing the one annoyance in the position to be taken, is just the end. Here, Magnus is 2 pawns up, and he goes on to convert and go through. But had black played bishop d6, and okay, yes, white wins a pawn, but at least now the black king gets in. Yes, you keep your pawn on e3. There's some drawing chances here. It could have gone the other way. So let's have a look at those standings again. So it's going to be Aronian versus Magnus Carlsen. I can't wait for the semi-finals tomorrow. It's going to be Liren versus Vladislav Artemiev. Very exciting event, this one. Some brilliant games so far. And I hope you enjoyed this roundup. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And I will be back now every day giving you this roundup of the activity. Just if you haven't got time to watch it all, who does? There's pubs to go to, football to watch. Cheers for now. Goodbye.